Let me first understand the greater voyage of humankind. Let me explore the grandest temples and churches and shrines, the holiest rivers and mountaintops. Let me feel the presence of God? Yes, I told myself, yes, for want of a better word, God. But first, I'd need my father's approval. More, I'd need his cash. I'd already mentioned making a big trip the previous year, and my father seemed open to it. But surely he'd forgotten, and surely I was pushing it, adding to the original proposal this crazy idea, this outrageous side trip to Japan? To launch a company? Talk about boondoggles. Surely he'd see this as a bridge too far. And a bridge too damned expensive. I had some savings from the Army and from various part-time jobs over the last several summers, on top of which I planned to sell my car, a cherry black 1960 MG with racing tires and a twin cam, the same car Elvis drove in Blue Hawaii. All of which amounted to $1,500, leaving me a grand short, I now told my father. He nodded, and flicked his eyes from the TV to me and back again while I laid it all out. Remember how we talked, Dad, how I said I wanted to see the world? The Himalayas, the pyramids? The Dead Sea, Dad? The Dead Sea? Well, I'm also thinking of stopping off in Japan, Dad. Remember my crazy idea, Japanese running shoes? Right? It could be huge, Dad, huge. I was laying it on thick, putting on the hard sell, extra hard, because I always hated selling, and because this particular sell had zero chance. My father had just forked out hundreds of dollars to the University of Oregon, thousands more to Stanford. He was the publisher of the Oregon Journal, a solid job that paid for all the basic comforts, including our spacious White House on Claiborne Street, in Portland's quietest suburb, Eastmoreland. But the man wasn't made of money. Also, this was 1962. The Earth was bigger then. Though humans were beginning to orbit the planet in capsules, 90% of Americans still had never been on an airplane. The average man or woman had never ventured farther than 100 miles from his or her own front door. So the mere mention of global travel by airplane would unnerve any father, and especially mine, whose predecessor at the paper had died in an air crash. Setting aside money, setting aside safety concerns, the whole thing was just so impractical. I was aware that 26 of 27 new companies failed, and my father was aware too, and the idea of taking on such a colossal risk went against everything he stood for. In many ways, my father was a conventional Episcopalian, a believer in Jesus Christ. But he also worshipped another secret deity, respectability. Colonial house, beautiful wife, obedient kids. My father enjoyed having these things, but what he really cherished was his friends and neighbors knowing he had them. He liked being admired. He liked doing a vigorous backstroke each day in the mainstream. Going around the world on a lark, therefore, would simply make no sense to him. It wasn't done. Certainly not by the respectable sons of respectable men. It was something other people's kids did, something beatniks and hipsters did. Possibly the main reason for my father's respectability fixation was a fear of his inner chaos. I felt this viscerally because every now and then that chaos would burst forth. Without warning, late at night, the phone in the front hall would jingle, and when I answered there would be that same gravelly voice on the line, "Come get your old man." I'd pull on my raincoat, it always seemed on those nights that a misting rain was falling, and drive downtown to my father's club. As clearly as I remember my own bedroom, I remember that club. A century old, with floor-to-ceiling oak bookcases and wing-back chairs, it looked like the drawing room of an English country house. In other words, eminently respectable. I'd always find my father at the same table, in the same chair. I'd always help him gently to his feet. "You okay, Dad?" "Course I'm okay." I'd always guide him outside to the car, and the whole way home we'd pretend nothing was wrong. He'd sit perfectly erect, almost regal, and we'd talk sports. Because talking sports was how I distracted myself, soothed myself in times of stress. My father liked sports too. Sports were